Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the onigirianco podcast. And today I am welcoming my friend Randy. Hello.
Hello.
Not like we already said hello, 45 minutes ago,
Yeah.
after all the technical problems.
I know. Hopefully there's no more.
It's good to have you online now. And I think some people will know of you. You are streaming on Twitch. You've been, you had your racing results in the US, and now you're racing in Australia. And we're going to talk about this later. But for the people who don't know you really well, do you want to tell us a little bit about you and your FPV journey, whatever you want to say?
Sure. I mean, some people probably remember me from Bot Grinders videos too.
I
I mean,
forgot that.
a lot of people, I show up to races and they're like, "Oh, I know you. I've seen you in Bot Grinders videos." So, yeah, I mean, there's a few different ways people might know me, but I'm Goddess Randi. I've been flying since 2016 now, which it's crazy to think that it's been 10 years. Like,
Yeah.
it flew by so quick. Um, But yeah, I started with freestyle, and when was it? I met up with Bot in 2019, like the middle of 2019, and
Mhm.
then started hanging out with him and met up with so many people since then, and gone to a bunch of events, both drone racing and freestyle stuff. It's been quite a journey.
Yeah. 10 years, it's a bit eerie to think about this.
Yeah, I know, right? It doesn't feel like that long at all. Um, in some ways it doesn't, and then in other ways it does because like so much has happened.
Yeah.
But it's definitely been a lot of fun for the most part. There's been definitely some down points and stuff like that.
Mhm.
The landscape of FPV has changed so much over that time, you know.
Yeah.
Um, the hardware has changed a lot since then. I mean, I started with like really shitty equipment running like CC3D flight controllers and individual ESCs, and now it's like all beta flight, and beta flight's so much better. And um, it's definitely gotten a lot better hardware wise in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
A lot easier to get into the hobby than it used to be.
Mm.
That I almost quit towards the beginning because I was so frustrated with like trying to repair stuff. Like there was a lack of accessibility to good resources and stuff. I mean, obviously there was stuff like Joshua Bardwell's videos and things like that, but um, it just wasn't as plentiful back then as it is now. Now it's a lot easier to get into it and stay in it and figure things out and find community and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
which is a good thing. Although even that's getting a little weird now with the way world events are affecting FPV and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
it's a weird phase at the moment. And even recently, when we were just calling, because you were like, you were frustrated about FPV and equipment, it feels like there's always wave of upgrades or of changes in firmwares. You were talking about firmware you're trying to run at the moment, and then you have to test new hardware. It feels like every time there's a big jump, and because you're racing, you have to adapt. It's always frustrating, isn't it, when things are working and then you have to change? Like, what was the latest that you were telling me about that you had
oh,
to
the problems I've had recently have all been with like AM32
Yeah.
and trying to get my quads working right with AM32 for racing.
Mm.
Which that seems to be, from what I've gotten from a lot of racing pilots, is like a big issue that they're struggling with. Like the Heli 32 just kind of died all of a sudden, and now it's like, everyone's trying to find either people who can still supply Heli 32. Some
Mhm.
people are moving to what is it, Oxbot, which is a whole nother firmware now.
Don't ask
Um,
me.
and AM32 is really big, but I've been flying AM32 for freestyle for a while, but I just have a hard time with it for racing. It just doesn't feel locked in the way that I need. I don't get the same amount of power out of it the way I expect it to, which maybe it's just a matter of like I need to suck it up and get used to it. I don't know, but I I'm just not as happy with AM32 overall.
Mhm.
Um, Not to say it's not a good firmware. It's definitely decent in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
I mean, I tested at work and it can definitely do a good amount. It has some good power output. It's just not not consistent in the way that I want it to be for racing.
Yeah.
And tuning it is a little bit weirder. I feel like it's a little more like they've gotten a lot better in terms of like the settings that I've seen on the ESC,
Mhm.
but it's a little less clear how some of them worked for a while, and even still, like I don't feel like they work exactly as I expect them to, according to their documentation and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But that's been a pain point for a lot of people. Like there's a lot of people who don't use AM32 for racing because they feel in some way similar to that.
Mhm.
And it's hard because it's like you want to be consistent when it comes to racing.
Yeah.
Like I mean, you want to be consistent in anything, even freestyle, but like with racing, it's so much tighter of maneuvers a lot of the time, and you have to consistently do them lap after lap after lap, and it needs to really feel correct and the way you need it to.
Yeah.
So it's a little frustrating, that's for sure. And then the other problem is like hardware availability. It's like sometimes it's not a matter of the like hardware being phased out, but just like no one has it in stock,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that can get frustrating too.
Yeah. That's what you said also. I think I assume that's what you said with when you said recent world event. It has impacted the hobby.
Yeah.
Um, Plus you changing continents as well. It probably also impacts your like
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I normally would buy that I just can't get a hold of here, or trying to get a hold of it by shipping it from the US or whatever is too expensive.
Mhm, mhm.
So that's definitely brought some change into the experience for me.
Yeah.
Some ways there's some things that have gotten a little bit better, but for the most part, it's like the US definitely had a much better assortment of companies and availability of parts overall.
Yeah.
So that's been a little bit of a thing to get used to coming to Australia for sure.
Yeah. When you started the hobby, we were talking about 2016. What shops were around? Was there already Get FPV and these kind of things over there or
I think they
coffee?
were already around.
Mhm.
When I first started buying, I was buying like cheap just to try and get into the hobby. So I was buying stuff off of, I forget if it was like AliExpress or Banggood or something like that.
Yeah.
So I was just buying stuff to try and get into it without too much money, because back then simulators I think were around, but they just weren't as good as what we have now as far as
Mhm.
simulators go,
Mhm.
which by far that's like the best way to learn, is go into a simulator and practice in there. But I started with just breaking stuff, so I needed it to be cheap.
Yeah. Um, so your first setup was built for freestyle, or was it like able to do a bit of racing as well?
So the first one that I built was like um I didn't know what I was getting into, to be honest. So like it was plus back at that point, race quads were not as different to freestyle quads. Like a lot of people were using the same frames and stuff for both.
Yeah.
So like I wasn't like thinking of one or the other. I mean, I was definitely more into the freestyle stuff in terms of like I came from a background of skateboarding, and like when I found um, videos online, it was videos of schizo and steel, and I was like, I want to do that. It looked like skateboarding in the sky to
Mhm.
me.
Yeah.
So like I really wanted to get into it for those reasons, but like I didn't know what I was getting into or how hard it would be or anything like that. So it was really just a matter of, at the beginning, get my hands on some hardware and try it out and see how I feel about it.
Mhm.
And the first quad that I bought, I ended up breaking a few times, and then I was just like, I hate this hobby. I'm never doing it again. And then like, I don't know, a couple months went by and I saw another video and I was just like, God damn it, I really want to do that.
Yeah.
And I learned fairly early on, which now the landscape's a lot different in terms of this. Like cheap parts are a lot better than cheap parts were back then.
Mhm.
But that's when I learned like spending a little bit more on parts is actually better, because you're breaking less,
Yeah.
like less often,
Yeah.
or more often, less
Less
often, left
less
more
of
often. I don't know. You're breaking stuff way less. Put it that way.
Yes. Yes.
Um, So that was a definite thing that I needed to learn at the beginning, because once I got a better frame that was made out of better carbon fiber, I wasn't breaking arms as often. Um, and it definitely lent to me practicing more because I was doing less repairs instead of, spending time flying.
Mm. Mhm.
Um, so that definitely helped a lot, because like going cheap isn't always the best way to go. You're better off going with better gear that's gonna work well, and you might break it still, but you're like, even with video stuff, like with analog video, a cheap VTX, yeah, if you break it, it's not as much money, but like you're more likely to crash when your video's shit.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that was definitely a part that I had to learn at the beginning,
Mhm. Yeah.
and that took a little bit. Um,
Especially it was tempted at the beginning, I mean, in the hobby to not, because the prices I felt like where there was less of a range. It was like either quite cheap or expensive, and because
yeah.
it wasn't popular, there was no in between. So it was easy to do what you did and I did, which is I'm gonna get this cheap piece of carbon and break it every
Mhm.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there wasn't as much like like I said, there wasn't as much community back then. It was harder to find people who were into it. There were a
Mhm.
lot less people doing it at the time.
Mhm.
So it's like you didn't have as many people to learn those mistakes from. And now like that's like there's so many people who have already made those mistakes, and you can go to and learn not to make them before you do.
Yes. Yes. How
um,
did you meet more people?
so when I first started, I didn't know too many people around, and the first friends that I made were so I was like just taking I had a tiny whoop. It was like an Acroby, and I would just take it with me because like I was doing IT work at the time, and sometimes they had like cool buildings and stuff like that, and so um, I was just going with it in my backpack all the time wherever I went. And if if one of the offices looked cool and like the office staff seemed chill, I'd just be like, "Would you mind if I fly this around a little bit?" And the one day I was there was this really cool building. It was like I forget exactly what the company did, but it was some kind of like reservation preservation type stuff.
Mhm.
So it was like a big like log cabin office basically.
Mhm.
So it had these really high rafters with like wood everywhere and everything like that. And I was like, this office just looks really cool to fly around in. And the people there were really chill. And I was just like, would you like at the end of the day, I'm like, would you mind if I actually fly this around a little bit? It just seems like a cool office.
Mhm.
And they're like, yeah, sure. So I start flying it around. And one of the girls that worked there, she came up to me and she's like, this is that FPV stuff, right? And I'm like, yeah, how do you know about this? And she's like, oh, well, my best friend Dave, he's into this, and
Mm.
he's like always looking for people to fly with and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm definitely down to meet up with him. I don't know anyone else that does this. And she's like, "Oh, are you into like the 3D printers and all that stuff too, like he is?" And I'm like, "Of course." So that was the first person that I started hanging out with, and then through him, we kept going to the same couple spots, and we ended up meeting some other people
Mhm.
along the way. And then it ended up being a group of like four of us after a little while, and for a good amount of time, that was it. It was just the handful of us that would go and meet at a few business parks and an IKEA parking garage and stuff
Mhm.
like that. And we just made it a semi-regular thing where we would go out and fly every couple weekends or whatever.
Mhm.
And then Dave was the first one who introduced me to bot grinders videos because we were both into like punk rock and stuff like that. We were talking about music the one day, and he's like, "Have you ever watched bot grinders videos?" And I'm
Mhm.
like honestly, I've never been someone who like watches a huge amount of FPV videos, but like I was like, the name doesn't sound familiar. Like maybe I caught some of his stuff, but I just didn't realize it.
Mhm.
And he's like, check out Bot Grinder. I think you'll like him. And I was just like, all right. And then I looked up his videos, and Bot just makes such good videos. so, so like I just immediately connected with it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just he was surprisingly accessible as far as like an FPV pilot goes, because like he had a good following even back then, and I remember like I'd watched a bunch of his stuff, and then at one point he had posted a video about having anxiety.
Mm.
And I was just like, no one ever talks about dealing with anxiety. And like I had been struggling with anxiety issues for years, and he posted this video about how he deals with it, stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I was just like, I reached out to him and I'm just like, that really connected with me. And I'm like, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about something that like most people aren't willing to speak up about and like needs to be more normalized and all that kind of stuff. And so we just started talking, and like I don't even remember how long after that it was, but like soon I was like going to hang out with him in Philly.
Nice.
So it was a very quick transition to from me watching his videos all of a sudden to being at the school he always flew at and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So it
Th
was just like it was a cool thing that really like set me in the hobby at that point. Like having the crew that I was flying with in New Jersey all the time was good. And then getting to connect with him and the Philly crew, that was like everything was like locked in at that point. I was like, I have two friend groups now.
That's awesome. And all of that in the span of like what, 12 months, a bit more than that, or how long did it take?
Um, so I started flying in 2016, and then by the time I actually bought like a really good quad, it was probably like closer to like the end of 2017, I think, at that
Mm.
point, where I
Yeah.
finally was like, I can't keep doing this breaking shit and repairing it. And so I got that, and then right after that was when I met up with Dave, and
Mhm.
then yeah, probably like 6 months to a year after that, I'm hanging out with Bot and his crew.
Yeah. And so up to that point, you were only freestyle with like 5 inch and your acroby and things like that. You had no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the longest time, I was only 5 inch and occasionally the tiny whoops. Just
Yeah.
because the tiny whoops, you could fly everywhere in the house, in office buildings, wherever.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it was primarily that. Even after meeting Bot, that's what it stayed for a really long time.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and then I think it was like 6 months Bot after meeting Bot and starting to hang out with him, there was the whole thing that was going on. It was like either the end of 2019 or sometime in 2020. Forget the exact year now, but they started pushing all the remote ID stuff in the US.
Mm, mhm.
And so that was like a very like I don't know what to call it, but it was like a very scary time in the hobby because it's like all of a sudden our hobby's being targeted, and it's like I just got into this. I just have friends for this. Like I don't want it to get ruined just because of this.
Yeah.
So a bunch of us ended up going, and we went to DC to protest it.
Mhm.
Um, which there were a good amount of people that went out for that protest.
Mhm.
But I went down and I met up with Bot and a handful of other people. That's actually how I ended up meeting a lot of the Rotoraya people at the time.
Mhm.
Um, so, which that was a really interesting
Yeah.
trip for me, to be honest, because like I went down knowing that Bot was going to be there and a couple other people locally that I knew, and then I was just like hanging out there, like protesting, holding up signs and stuff. And then I happened to walk into Zoe at one point,
Ah, yeah.
and I was just like, "I know you, you're Zoe." And we started talking, and she was like there was like a whole bunch of plans for that weekend that like I didn't really go into it knowing about. So like she was like, "Oh, are you gonna stick around and like we're going to Baltimore after the protest is done, and we're doing like a fun fly event and stuff like that." I'm like, I had no idea any of that was going on.
Mhm.
I'm like, I only booked a hotel for the night and was planning on protesting for 2 days. And she's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'll find you a place to stay." And she got me in with one of the Airbnbs with people she knew, and like I ended up spending the whole weekend with Rotor Riot. Like there was Bardwell there.
Mhm.
That's when I met Steele for the first time. Uh, I was hanging out with Cricket.
Mhm.
I met Drew. Um, I don't know. There were so many people there. I can't even remember everyone that was there. But it was a really interesting weekend, and it was just like spur of the moment. Like I just decided last minute I'm going down to protest because like I can't stand the idea of this hobby that means a lot to me now being destroyed over stupid laws.
Mhm,
And then it ended up being this really cool thing where I ended up meeting all these awesome pilots over the
mhm,
weekend.
mhm. You did well knowing that you mentioned you have anxiety because I feel like this type of things is very anxiety inducing.
It was so anxiety inducing, and it was really, I don't know, it got kind of bad at one point because like I went down not expecting there to be there the whole weekend, and I was on anxiety meds at the time.
Yeah.
So like I only had a couple days worth of anxiety meds, and then halfway through the weekend I'm like, "Oh god." And Bot's just like, "I got a bunch of weed. It's okay."
Yeah, typical.
But yeah, it was pretty fun. And because I didn't know how, like, I went down at the time I was with my ex-wife. So
Mhm.
I went down and we drove down together and spent the night. And then she was like, "I can't stay. I have to work." So I was like, "Well, I got to try and find a ride back and stuff like that." So I talked to Bot and he's like, "Yeah, I don't mind giving you a ride back." So I rode back with him. But before we even came back, we hung out with Cricket and went to Cricket's school that he always filmed at and stuff.
Yeah.
So like I got this whole cool experience of like hanging out with all these people and flying cool spots and everything. It
Yeah.
was a lot of fun.
And a lot of them, I haven't met Cricket or Drew in real life. I've chatted with Drew sporadically in the past, but like you mentioned Steele, and he's just laid back. Like he's not as, at the time, he was still making his like vlogs on YouTube where he's like, "Wow, blah, blah, blah," like, yeah,
Yeah, he wasn't like that when I met him in
he's,
person.
yeah, he's not like that in person. So yeah.
No, so like I was expecting that. So like I knew Bot for a while at that point, and Bot is pretty much the same person on camera and off. He's just a little toned down in real life.
Yeah.
So like I was like, I expected Steele to just be the same person I saw on camera. And then I started talking to him and he was so chill. We had like a nice conversation about life stuff and everything. And
Mhm.
it was just like, this is not what I expected, but it's cool.
Yeah, yeah. It is funny. The first time I met him in person was in Eric Conasti in California, in his shop, because we were meant to meet up with him, with the guy from Sweep Wings, so Ruben, and Steele, so Eric, Steele, and Ruben, from the, what's their podcast? The, oh my god, the most famous FPV podcast, whatever. I'll remember. I'll put it in the video. Oh my god, I can't believe Team Failsafe. I was like, I know that. Um, but yeah, he was just. I was like, oh my god, he's real, which is weird. I don't get starstruck, but it's like when I saw you the first time coming here. I'm like, I'm touching the. I didn't touch him, but I'm like, I'm like, I could touch them. We're in the same room. I'm like, I
I
could do.
know it was kind of surreal when I came here and got to see you in person for the first time. It's like we've been talking for like what 2 years at that point, I
Yeah,
guess. I don't even know
I
exactly.
don't remember.
And it's just like so much time that we've spent talking to each other and we know each other so well, but we've
Yes.
never met in person.
Yes, yeah. It's so nice to finally meet people. Like you mentioned Zoe. Zoe is the reason, was the final drop in a glass of water. I don't know how to say that in English, but I was like, when I saw her on Roto Riot episode, I was like, okay, a woman is doing it. I can do it. Let's go for it. And then I met her in real life on that same big trip in the US. And I was like, you're here. Oh my God. There's a photo of her and me that my ex boyfriend took. I think I have the biggest smile I've ever had on a photo ever. Like, just like raining the whole time. It's the best when you finally get to meet the people, not because they're like YouTube famous, but they mean a lot to your personal life because you watch them, and then you get to meet them, and it's always the best. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they have that saying like never meet your heroes.
True.
But I don't feel like that entirely applies to FPV. It's different.
It doesn't. And I think I never told Butt Grinder, but I was just starting flying. I think Zumo is crying somewhere. Oh, she wants to get out. My dog wants to get out of the room. Just
Okay.
hold on a second. She got locked in with me, and apparently she hates it. um,
She's like, "You're not paying attention to me, mom."
yes. Well, the story I'm going to say, I don't know if I ever said it on the podcast. I feel like I've said it, but I'll just repeat myself. So I was starting to fly in the desert, and Bud Grinder contacts me, right, in a DM, and he's like, hey, I'm creating this whole little online crew of underground pilot, blah blah blah. And I just look at his profile, and you know how he is. He has all his tattoos, and he looks cool. And at the time, I said, "No, I'm not interested." And I hope I never sounded like I thought I was too good for this or whatever. It was the opposite. I was like, "Oh my god, I have pink hair and I have tattoos, but I'm not badass like him at all. I cannot be part of I cannot be part of this." So at the time I was like, "Oh no, maybe later, maybe thank you." But again,
Yeah.
if you know him in real life, you wouldn't. I'm not saying he's not badass. He's the most badass of all. But I'm like, I shouldn't have been shy. I should have been like, yeah, no worries. You know?
Yeah. No, I mean, for me, like, so I'd always been like a punk rock girl. When I was younger, I was like going to punk shows and shit like that. And then like I didn't grow out of all of that, but like my style definitely changed. Like I don't wear the spiky belts and stuff like that all the time anymore or anything like that.
Yeah,
I haven't dyed my hair a crazy color in a while, although I still want to. It's just
do it.
once my hair gets a little longer, I probably will again. We need to have a little more healthy hair back.
Fair.
But like it's been a while since I've been in that stage of my life where I'm like, you know, dyeing my hair and wearing the spiky stuff and all that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. So like when I met him, I was like, I feel like I'm probably going to be out of place here, but honestly, like he's got the most welcoming atmosphere around him, and the people that he has around him are so diverse, and like a lot of us are outcasts in some way or another, but not necessarily like like punk rock people like he is all the time, you know?
Mhm. Yeah,
Um, which it's awesome the way he's been able to like create that space for people
yeah,
because it's I mean for FPV as a whole, I feel like it's always been a more accepting hobby in general.
mhm,
Like when I was before doing FPV, I was into RC cars and stuff like that. And that's like it's all guys. It's all
mm,
guys and they're very like gatekeepy and you know, it's not as accepting of like girls being around or people who are, you know, not just cis white males.
mhm,
And so like going into it like I still had those reservations of it being kind of like that, but like he had such a good space around him, the way he is and the aura that he has around him in general, just being himself. And then the people that he attracts are just like very accepting and very chill. And, you know, there's, you don't have to ever feel like worried that you don't have a place in that group. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Unless you're being like a Nazi or a racist or something like that, and then you can go fuck yourself.
Exactly, like what he said in his recent video about the FPV park. I thought it was really showing his character, um, even though he's been criticized in in the past about that specific FPV park and things like that. And I'm I think he didn't owe us a video at all, but just the fact that he decided to make one and explain everything and the things that he said in that video, I was like, this is so him. From the in a good way. I was like,
Mhm.
we have a lot of role models in FPV for many different reasons, racing inspiration, freestyle inspiration, creative. And I think he flies really well, but in terms of me, of like um the positive traits as a human being, he's like top one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt that way for a long time, and I mean, I know from my perspective, like I'm a little more biased when it comes to him. I
Mhm,
mean, he's one of my best friends.
mhm,
I call him regularly, even since coming to Australia,
mhm,
and like he's been there for me when I've really needed someone, and didn't have a lot of people around.
mhm,
So like, it's hard for me to not see him in that light. And I know that some people do have problems with him and stuff like that, but I really feel like most people who have problems with him are unjustified.
yeah.
Um, I mean, I was struggling when I transitioned.
Mhm,
I was struggling in a lot of ways because I faced discrimination at work.
mhm,
I went through a divorce. It got to the point where I ended up homeless at one point.
mhm,
And he was he was on his live stream raising money for me, so I didn't have to be out sleeping in a car in the cold during the winter and stuff like that. Like, so like to me, like it's hard to see him in any light other than he's just a good person.
Yeah.
Like he really just tries to do what's right all the time. And you can even see that like as far as in the FPV stuff, it's like he doesn't like taking like products and just shilling for people and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like he has like real morals when it comes to what he's showing off and selling. And like even in his latest videos, he's like, I can't justify pushing stuff that like you have to subscribe for and give all your information to and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like there's so many pilots that have turned into like, you know, the affiliate link, you know, people who just like every other video, this is the best drone and here's an affiliate link for it and stuff like that. And he just never fell into that. And it shows, you know, he has a spine and he has, you know, some ethics behind himself.
Yeah. And at the same time, if he gets something for free that he was planning to do, and that's why I was laughing. I was thinking of his latest video with the drone that flies on its own and flies backwards and crashed a bit. And then I just laughed so much in that video. But he's gonna do the video because someone sent him 2 drones at the end of the day, right? So it's
Yeah.
but he's like, I'm not gonna tell you to buy it if you don't want it. Like this shit just crashed. But I actually had a great time watching that video. And you know what? That would make me want to buy the drone just because of the fucking bullshit in the video happening. Anyway, yeah, he's definitely good. But to come back to you and your story.
Yeah.
So we're at that period of time where you're doing freestyle and you have found these 2 groups now you're flying with, and it's pretty cool. And you go to the protest, so you're really involved in the hobby. How do you go from there to you know what, let's start racing and become competitive?
So there was a little bit of a gap because like I said, I did go through a period where I was homeless and it was harder to keep in the hobby during that time and stuff like that. And then when I finally got for a little while a stable place to stay, it was during COVID by that time.
Sorry, it's not funny, but Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, it is funny. It's like I go from like not having anywhere to live to being stuck in a house.
Yep.
So it gets to that point where COVID's pretty much full force here. And I know in the US, we didn't have as much of a lockdown as you guys did here, but it was still like, you know, I didn't want to go out and risk my life. No one knew what was going on and stuff like that. So I needed something to do to keep me occupied while I was in the house. And at the time I found the Drone Racing League simulator. And I was just like, let me give this a try. And they had a really great host for their community tournaments. He was going by Canoodle at the time. He also went by TK. And he was like hosting these regular, like, I think when I first started, it was like 3 a week. At one point it was up to 6 a week that he was doing, but it was like regular community tournaments through the simulator. And he would do the live stream with like commentation and like made it a whole big production. Like it felt like you were participating in a real race.
Nice.
And that really got me hooked on it. Cause like, it not having the ability to go out and fly with everybody as much and everybody being afraid to go out and meet with people and everything. Like we weren't not meeting up, but it was like a lot less. And so, it was a hard time as far as like the community and hobby wasn't completely dead, but people weren't hosting races. People weren't like hosting as many FPV events and stuff like that. And, you know, even meeting up with people, it was like, you know, we were keeping groups small at the time. So you weren't hanging out with as many people. You weren't hanging out as often. And so the simulator community for Drone Racing League became that for me in that interim. I met a lot of really good racing pilots from all around the world through that. And because it was COVID, I wasn't working at the time. I had a lot of spare time to spend on it. So I sat there and was practicing some days for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
And so it got to the point where I was like competing and practicing with some of the fastest pilots in the world. And um, it took a little while, but I got to a point where I was like at least getting into the top six
Mhm.
with some regularness to it in the simulator community races. Um, and then the it was kind of unfortunate because I got into it and I got to that point of like being really good and like being able to compete with like these really fast pilots in it. And then um the last year that I forget exactly what year it was, but the last year that they had their tryouts, I got to the point where I was good enough to actually qualify for their tryouts, which they only take 64 people for.
Yeah.
So I qualified for the tryouts, but that was a level of pressure that I just was not prepared for at the time.
Mhm.
Like the community tournaments did have some level of pressure, but it was just like the stakes were a lot lower. Like if I didn't
Yeah.
win, nothing was on the line for it or anything like that. And so I just wasn't prepared for it in that. And then I whiffed it fairly early on in the tournament. And it was frustrating, but the more frustrating part is not very long after that, DRL just kind of folded. Like
Yeah.
they just disappeared really quickly. Like it they had a big mass layoff where they laid everyone off, including the person who was running the community tournaments. So
Mhm.
it took away that like online regular community like thing that I had.
Yeah.
And then like they kept saying, oh, we're not going anywhere, we're just restructuring and all this other stuff. And then they just kind of disappeared fairly quickly.
Yeah.
um like I don't think the pilot that won the tryouts that year even got to race at all at
Okay.
DRL. um so it was like, honestly, it was kind of devastating because it was something that I needed at the time, and it was a community that like definitely helped me keep it together during that hard time of COVID. Um, but it it just went away so quick, and it
Mhm.
was crazy. And I still have community left over from that. Like I still have friends that I made through that I still communicate with to this day.
Mhm.
Um, and it got me into contact with a lot of people who are really good pilots all around the world. And like, I'm very appreciative for the help that they've given me over the time.
Mhm.
But also towards the end of all that happening, one of them, I was talking to them about, I don't know what to do with my time and all this stuff. And he was like, you should try Street League. And I was like, I, I, I had tried racing like earlier on with 5-inch racing,
Mhm.
but like it was when I was not as skilled to start off with, but also like it was at that point when racing frames got a lot smaller and lighter.
Yep.
But with not having the skills being where they needed to be for racing, like I was just destroying quads. Like I
Yeah.
would hit a gate and just be destroying half the quad half the time and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I was just like, this is not for me. Like this is too much destruction. I feel like I'm going back to the frustrating part at the beginning
Yeah.
of this hobby where I almost quit.
Yeah.
So 5-inch racing has never been so much my thing.
Mhm.
And I do 5-inch racing now, but it's just I don't try to be super competitive in it or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's more just to be able to go to more races and have the community and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, so he was like, try Street League," and I was like, I really don't want to get into real racing again. Like I was so frustrated last time, and he was like, no, Street League is different. He's like, it's a lot closer to what DRL is. And he's like, it's the quads are a lot stronger, they're beefier, you're going a lot slower, you break a lot less stuff.
Mhm.
And I trusted him. He was like, so him and I actually went through a tournament together, and it was a community held tournament after DRL started folding up. And it was a doubles tournament, so it was like two people racing side by side, competing with other teams of two people.
Mhm.
And him and I were like, neither of us were people that anyone really knew very well at the time.
Mhm.
But we ended up coming in third place in that tournament behind people like Hyper and J-Box and Gilbert and Lego clone. I don't know what he's going by anymore. But
Mhm.
so like they're really fast pilots, and we were able to compete with them and come in third place. And we didn't give him an easy time with it either. So it was definitely like that, like solidified my friendship with him. So when it got to the point of he was like, try Street League, I was like, all right, I'll do it because I trust you. We've been through all this stuff together. I trust your judgment. And like it was one of the best things that I ever did, because I built my first Street League quad, and I like honestly, like it was like I had never gone to a real race and competed in any real respect.
Mhm.
And then the very first race that I went to, I was going to a national level race for Street League. And I had just built this quad. I made sure it was flying. I flew down to Florida, and like the week of, I went to, because like New Jersey was like like it was in the middle of February during that race, so it was still like snow and shit out in New Jersey.
Mhm.
And so I flew down to Florida and went to a track down there when no one was there, and that they had set up all the time. And I was just like, all right, let me see if I can get through this.
Mhm.
And I went through the track, and I was like, all right, I have a little bit of confidence in this.
Yeah.
And so I went to my first national race in a completely different state, and
Mhm.
with a quad that I literally built like 2 months before, and only had a couple days of trying to practice with it.
Mhm.
And I didn't do amazing at that race, but also that first race was like, it was like a real trial, a real
Yeah.
trial by fire, because I get there, and um like the first day we're setting everything up, and it's nice out, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great. And then it just started pouring.
Oh,
The entire
okay.
weekend was just pouring rain. And I was like, I didn't conformal coat my quad. I didn't expect this. I
Mhm.
just built the thing. I don't even know if it's 100% race ready and stuff like that. Um, which I had a bit of like panic attacks at the beginning, because I was like, oh God, I'm not ready for this. This is too much. But I ended up having some troubles in the beginning, and once I got through, honestly, I the first day of racing, I sat in the car, and it's like raining out, and everyone's getting ready, and I just sat in the car, and I was just like panicking, going, I can't do this. This is too much. I'm freaking out. And then I get a I get a message on my phone through Discord, and it's Hyper, and he's like, "Where are you?" And I was like, I didn't even know you knew that I was here or who I was or anything like that. He's like, I see your stuff's here. Where are you? We're about to start practicing. And I'm like, all right. If he's got some confidence in me and wants to see me race, then I gotta go do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that gave me a little bit of a boost, and I started racing, and racing in the rain was not easy.
Mhm.
Um it was hard to get started. It was like you get raindrops on your lens, and you just can't see shit for a whole second or two until it
Yeah.
blows off in the flying. So it was like a real trial to start a race out that way. Um, and
Trial
then
by water, not fire.
yeah, right. It really was a trial by water, not fire. But but I made it through the weekend, and like it was very cool, because first of all, I went into it and a lot of people didn't know who I was.
Mhm.
And then I came out of it, like there were races that I won in during the tournament. Um I forget what place I actually ended up in. It wasn't last. It
Mhm.
was not first either. It was somewhere in the middle.
Mhm.
But there were quite a few people who had no idea who I was. They didn't participate in the DRL sim community and
Mhm.
stuff like that. So like one of the guys who was running the race, he's like, you just came and flew a national race out of nowhere. And I'm like, yeah, I built this quad like a week ago, like a month ago. And he's like, and you're flying this well already. And I'm like, well, I had some practice in the simulator. And he's
Yeah.
like, but this is a national level race. You get that, right?
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So it was overall a good experience, and the rain really sucked, but like it made it a lot easier to go to the next races that I went to.
Mhm.
So that it being as bad as it was weather-wise, and like it really pushed me to get over a lot of that anxiety and panic. And now it's like, now I go to races and I don't even think about it. It's just like I go and I'm like, all right, I'm ready.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you feel like it was like anything you needed to get exposure to your anxiety like triggers, and then you're just like, oh, actually, I can do it. So who cares?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's one of the biggest things I've learned about my anxiety in general. It's like anxiety lies all the time. Like it tells you things that are just not true, and exaggerates the things that are true if they are. And so, um, between my social anxiety at races, which I learned this a little bit in the simulator community, but like it really drove it home, like flying to another state and having all that happen.
Mhm.
Um, but like exposure is a very big important part to getting over that anxiety, because like I said, it lies. So if you're not proving to yourself that those are lies, it's harder to get past them at any point.
Mhm.
You know, your brain is just going to keep telling you the lies if you don't prove them wrong.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it definitely, it's made a big difference in a lot of ways, and like it's part of what's allowed me to do a lot of the things that I've done, including coming to Australia. Like
Mhm.
that was a lot, and there was a lot of anxiety around that. I mean, obviously, I didn't come here in on the greatest terms with what's going on in the world right now, but
Yeah.
um, you know, knowing that my anxiety is a lying bitch, it definitely helps make it easier to overcome those things a lot of the time.
I feel this is amazing with FPV because obviously it's a hobby that will attract, without being too much in cliche, but it attracts nerdy people or introvert people
Mhm.
who most of the time have a lot of anxiety,
Yeah.
um, social anxiety. And I feel like as a soft skill that you end up getting, like you're not thinking of it when you join the hobby, but then you end up finding groups and you're like, oh, I make friends. And and like for you now, you're streaming now, I think of everything that
Yeah.
you've accomplished, and lots of people have like similar paths, and you're like, well, actually I'm a little bit more extrovert than I thought. It's
Yeah.
nice.
It definitely does. It changes over time for sure. And like, it's little wins here and there until you get to a point where it's like, oh, I'm doing things I never would have done before.
Yeah.
Like the first time I hung out with Thought and that crew, I was like so intimidated and like nervous and stuff. But that let me get used to going and meeting new pilots, especially because he attracts a lot of different pilots all the time.
Hmm.
Even just hanging out with like the crew, like it's never just the Philly crew. It's always like the Philly crew plus, other people and stuff
Hmm.
like that.
Hmm.
So it definitely opened up new world. And then like, that whole weekend going to DC, that pushed me into another level and got me past a bunch of my anxiety. Um, and it's just been step by step. Like all of these things have helped me get to where I am now, where I
Hmm.
can like, go to a race and like introduce myself to people and have the confidence that I'm like not gonna make a fool of myself and stuff like that.
Yes, it's very true. I'm laughing more like because it's relatable. I didn't do any racing, so every time I've met people was always through freestyle, and I found that it was amazing. One of the great thing about having a YouTube channel, or I assume streaming is some people will know you, and so you don't have I had the advantage after a while to not have to be like, "Hi, I'm Noeli, and live in Australia," and people were like, "Oh yeah." They knew everything. Sometimes I thought I said something new, and they were like, "No, we know that. We've seen it." I'm like, "Ah, okay," and that's great because then what I can do is just listen, which is what I usually do, and then
Yeah.
they tell me about them, and I'm like, "Perfect. I don't have to tell them about myself. I can
It's
just
like
listen."
a built-in icebreaker.
Yeah.
For me, it's been kind of weird because so obviously I've been hanging out with Botgrinder. I've been in some of his videos and stuff like that. I do stream. There's all the drone racing stuff that I've done, but the simulator stuff is part of that too. And like,
Mhm.
you know, when you're practicing and trying to get better in the simulator, you tend to start seeing the same names all the time on the leaderboard,
Mhm.
but you don't know what those people look like a lot of the time.
Mhm.
So, like, there's times where I'd go to races and I'd tell people what my pilot name is, and they'd be like, "Goddess Randi, I've been trying to beat your time forever." And it's just like that's a whole different experience because there's that detachment of like you don't know what each other look like, and you've probably seen each other's names on the leaderboards a bunch of times, but
Yes.
like then you meet in person and you're like, wait, it clicks. Wait, I know who you are. I've been racing your ghost forever.
Oh, that's amazing. And so doing all of this, speaking of like trying to beat each other's time, and that's also an aspect that you realized. Did you know before FPV that you liked competition and that you liked, beating people, beating people, like being better?
No, honestly, like prior to drone racing, I was probably one of the least competitive people ever. Like, I hated competition. I hated having to try and beat people. Like, I was always like, I don't care. I don't care enough to be better than someone.
Mhm.
And then when I got into the DRL stuff, like the community is what got me into it because it was like I'm making friends, I'm talking to people online all the time and like, you know, we're all sitting on Discord practicing the same tracks and stuff like that and
Mhm.
getting into the tournaments. And then like as I was watching my name go up on the leaderboards more and more each week, like it just started building with that. And it was just like it almost became like an addiction to seeing my name go higher.
Nice. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
it's interesting because that's a feeling you still carry with you. You carried it through Street League. That unfortunately, yeah, we actually didn't close up on this. But actually before we close up on this, sorry, at some stage Fuji was barking. And I
Yeah.
can't remember if you explained a bit what Street League is, because I don't know if everybody will know if they're mainly freestyler on the podcast as well.
Yeah, so Street League, was born like partly from DRL.
Mhm.
So Street League is a spec racing league
Mhm.
that's separate from MultiGP and was created by Sky was one of the DRL pilots, and he wanted to make DRL but more accessible to people because
Okay.
DRL, other than the simulator, is like very exclusive on who gets to race. It's like only the pro pilots
Mhm.
that like win the tryouts or get picked can ever fly the quads.
Mhm.
And so he wanted to bring that to a bigger group of people, and it's a bigger size quad. It's a heavier quad. It's RPM limited, so you can't go as fast as like 5-inch racing, and it kind of levels the playing field in terms of, um, you know, the it's not as dependent on hardware and who has the best hardware.
Mhm.
It's more about people's skills and where they closely match up and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, so it's to me that was part of what drew me into DRL is like everyone's flying the same quad in the simulator.
Yeah.
No one can have an advantage at that point of just like being rich and having a bunch of hardware or being sponsored and having the best hardware because it's getting supplied to them or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a racing league that's definitely more geared towards making it accessible to everybody, and um, it's a very fun community in terms of like to me, MultiGP isn't. It's not that they have a bad environment. Most of the clubs have really good people running them and stuff like that, but it's a little bit more intense, I guess you could say. Like people are, depending on the club, people can get very like, like overly competitive, and
Mhm.
just like everyone still helps each other, but also like it's a little bit more intense to deal with.
Okay.
Where Street League, like part of what drew me to it and kept me in it, is it's a little bit more of like a laid back environment in general. Not that the races and tournaments aren't held like professionally. They do a really good job in terms of that.
Mhm.
But just like the way that it's managed and the way that it feels as a whole, it's a much more laid back
Mhm.
environment. Um, which for me was more comfortable in terms of like it felt more like hanging out with Bot Grinder and the Philly crew, but with racing.
Yeah.
So it was a much more welcoming environment in terms of that.
Yeah.
Um, and it made it really fun to get into, and it's you're able to be competitive but not in a like an overly stressful environment. And um it's got a nice level playing field where everybody, you know, you're not. One of the things I like about the big 7-inch spec racing is the slowest people aren't like, minutes behind everybody else.
Yeah.
Like the spread is a lot tighter, and it makes for a more fun racing, because like part of what makes racing fun to me is like having people like pop up in your view and like trading spaces with people. Whereas like 5-inch racing is very much, if you fuck up, like everyone's way ahead of you, and it's a lot harder to catch up to them.
Yeah.
There were so many races that I had where it was like, oh, I messed up, but like, and they got ahead of me. But if I can take these handful of turns, really tight and really well, I'll be able to catch up to them. And it makes it a much more fun racing in
Mm.
general because of that.
Yeah. And in terms of racing, I remember when you explained to me before, like how you were racing, like it's pretty much full throttle all the time.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like, so with the big quads, you've got RPM limiting. They're really heavy,
Hmm.
so like you're not you're not up and down on the throttle as much as you are with 5-inch.
Hmm.
It's mostly just like pin it to the top, and then as you go to take a turn, drop it a little bit, pull around, turn, and then put it back up to the top and just hold it there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um,
Do you know how much they weight, those drones, like roughly? Do you
yeah,
remember?
it's 1,280 grams.
180 grams. Okay. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Jesus. The brick.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I let you hold mine when I was at the house. It felt like a brick, right?
You dropped it, and I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God. Yes. Yeah. I saw it. And it looks fun for exactly what you said. And also, I feel like because there's LEDs, and it would be so fun to just set up somewhere and you can have an audience that actually get to see what's happening.
And that's what they're really part of what they're trying to do with it. That's part of why they like coming from DRL. DRL was trying to be a spectator sport.
Mm-hmm.
And Street League is trying to keep that in what they're doing, which is part of why it's a slower quad. There's LEDs all over it. They've been hosting races at like one of the last races I went to before coming here, it was at a county fair in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had like bleachers set up, and like people at the fair could come and sit down and watch us racing and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
it's especially like enticing to people when it gets to being dark. It's a
Mm-hmm.
little harder learning to fly in the dark lighting and stuff like that. But when gates are lit up and your quads are all lit up, it's really entertaining for people to watch and see the lights like zipping around the track and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely some stuff that they need to work on in terms of like spectator wise, people aren't like don't know what drone racing is a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to them to see and go, ooh, ah, for a short period of time, but it's hard for them to get invested in it.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest things that I've noticed with pretty much every drone racing like group that's tried to make it more of a spectator sport.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to make it interesting for people where they actually get invested in the pilots and who's winning and stuff like that. It's more
Yeah.
of just a spectacle that they look at for a little while and then they move on. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
which is, I think, part of why DRL was a little bit more than that with all of the production and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think they overextended themselves with that because it's hard to fill a stadium with people who don't know anything about drone racing.
Yeah. Yeah. And they need like a Netflix series or something about about the Street League, like Drive to
Yeah.
Survive with F1, where you get to know people and you're like, ah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that I was talking to Sky and some of the other people that were running that race in Colorado, and one of the things that they said is like talking to people that were watching, like the random spectators, like everyone knew who I was because I was the girl with the bright pink quad, and
Yeah.
everyone else just kind of blended into everybody else, and they didn't know who was who. So like
Mm.
people knew when I was racing, but everybody else, they were just like, I don't know who this is.
Yes. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Mhm. And
So
so looking back at this, is it still like, obviously you had to stop that, like the league is still going on, but you had to leave because you moved country. We
yeah.
can talk about this as well, obviously, but is it still like the best racing experience you've had, or it's you still also you probably like the simulator for DRL and as much? What do you think?
So, I mean, Street League is definitely by far my favorite for a lot of reasons.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, it's kind of got a special place in my heart because it is the first racing league that I got into and actually enjoyed doing.
Hmm.
Um, it definitely opened me up to doing more racing in general. Like I said, I do 5-inch racing now,
Hmm.
which coming to Australia kind of pushed me into that. Like Street League doesn't really exist here.
Hmm.
When I got here, like some people were doing pro spec racing, which is multi GP's
Hmm.
newer version of Street League, but it wasn't as big when I first got here. So like I was like, well, if I'm gonna make friends in racing, I'm gonna have to pick up a 5-inch quad.
Yeah.
And I was really lucky that when I got here, people helped me and gave me parts and got me up and running.
Yeah.
The community's been great for that in so many ways at so many points in my life.
Hmm.
Um, but so I started 5-inch racing, and now that I'm in Sydney, Sydney seems to have a little bit more going on pro spec wise
Hmm.
than Melbourne did at the time when I was there. I think it's changing there too now, but
Okay.
um, pro spec is definitely growing. I just, to me, it feels like knockoff Street League. Like
Mm.
it's similar enough where I can enjoy it in a similar way, but it's missing like some of the other aspects, like the community part of it and stuff like that that I liked with Street League.
Mhm.
Um, and then there are differences in like the weight is slightly different. The one is 5S, one is 6S. And then there's the whole thing. Street League has this really like interesting game part of it where they have a boost button.
Ah.
So you get 3 boosts per race. So it like you get like a little bit of extra speed when you need it every once in a while.
Mhm.
And it can really make a difference occasionally because like you can be like in one of those positions where you fuck up a little bit and like you're a little bit behind everybody and then you hit that boost button and then you catch up to them real quick. So it like adds a little bit of like fun factor to it that
Yeah.
Prospect just doesn't have.
Okay.
And it actually adds a little bit more strategy to it as well because like when you are at that top level and like racing against people or in a race with people that are very similar in your skill set, um, knowing when to use a boost and when not to can make a big difference in a race and can win you stuff. So it adds a little bit that I sometimes enjoy, sometimes hate, but it makes it a little bit more fun overall.
Yeah. And do you think it's like it would be too hard to try to have a street league equivalent here so that it's almost becoming an international? Does it exist anywhere else than in the US, or like does
As far as I know, US is like the biggest area for Street League. I don't
okay.
know. I don't. So as far as here goes, there was Street League here for a little while, but it just didn't take hold like um, like there weren't people promoting it enough, I guess, or running enough races at the time.
Yeah.
Um, Going to pro spec races though, I've run across quite a few people where I say like because I wear my street league hat all the time,
Mhm.
and I go to pro spec races with my street league hat on, and then people would start talking to me about street league, and they're like, "I wish it was here. I like street league," but there's no one running the races, and like multi GP is really pushing pro spec, so all the chapters that are doing multi GP have that built-in pathway to it.
Yeah.
Um, so it's just not getting the footing here like it has the potential of.
Yeah. And it's a bit, yeah. So now talking about all of this, I think I know your perspective on this, but do you feel like you're more limited with FPV options? And like moving to Australia, I feel like from the US, and trying to stay an FPV pilot is already hard when you're doing freestyle and 5 inch. But like in your case, it was so specific. I feel like it's even harder. But what do you think?
So in some ways it was easy coming here because there is a good drone racing community. It
Okay.
just took that bit of me switching at least temporarily from 5 inch to or from pro spec and street league to 5 inch
Yeah.
to be able to have that built-in community,
Mm-hmm.
which made the transition coming here fairly easy.
Mm-hmm.
As far as freestyle goes, though, freestyle is just not as big here. I mean, in general, I find less freestyle pilots overall.
Mm-hmm.
The ones I do meet, they're very hesitant on flying a lot of places and doing a lot of things, partly because of how restrictive CASA is,
Yeah.
the Australian equivalent of the FAA.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are afraid to do a lot of things because of CASA, which from what I hear, it's getting a lot worse in the US now as well, where people are less likely to fly because of what the FAA is changing and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
they may catch up to us anyway.
Yeah.
The other part of what I've found here is the especially where I came from in New Jersey and like Philly area, Pennsylvania, like New York even, there's like a lot of abandoned buildings.
Yes.
So like that opened up a whole lot as far as that goes. Plus, like especially New Jersey. New Jersey is full of business parks all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not common for them to be fenced off and like gated and stuff like that where you can't get into them. They're just open parking lots on Saturdays and Sundays. They're often completely empty because no one's working.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like all these great spots to go to and fly and have a good time, without too much interference. Most of the time, the cops don't give a shit as long as you're not vandalizing stuff and all that.
Yeah.
So like it's fairly plentiful, at least in that area, to find good flying spots.
Yeah.
Um, Here, on the other hand, abandoned buildings don't seem to last long. There's very few that you can find and fly in regularly.
Mm-hmm.
They fence things off a lot more. I mean, even as far as like schools in the US, most of them are not fenced in.
Oh
So
wow.
like high schools and stuff like that, you can go and fly the premises and stuff. And some of them have like, cool architecture and like covered walkways going between buildings and stuff like that. Cool things to fly around.
Mm-hmm.
And here, like, I definitely see good architecture and stuff like that, but a lot of it's behind fences, behind walls. Um, there's signs everywhere that say no trespassing and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's a lot less plentiful on the places to fly.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more of the parks that I've seen here have signs up saying no drones and stuff like that, which it's moving that way in the US too.
Mm.
More and more parks were starting to put up signs that said, no flying, no drones, no RC stuff, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely freestyle in general has taken a hit as far as like how much I'm doing of it,
Yeah.
um, which is a little frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely taken a bit to get used to. And also, not having a car here affects that a lot too.
Yeah.
Um, I was used to having a car in the US and just driving everywhere and like being able to drive around to a handful of spots in a day and try and find ones that are going to be good to fly and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like there were weekends where I would just like I would sit on Google and find a bunch of spots near me and then just drive out to a handful of them and scope them out and see like which ones were going to be good spots to fly and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't have that option here. And then there's just fewer good spots to actually fly, even when I'm with people who have cars and stuff like that. It's just like finding a good spot to fly is hard. Like even you and I, when we went to that asylum,
Hmm.
like it was all fenced off. So like there was that risk of like you get stuck and you might not get your quad back.
Yeah, and even like with my shitty VTX, if it was the US, I would fly around the structure because I'd be like, if I crash, I go get it. But like,
Yeah.
yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so the vibe in that regard has definitely been a lot different.
yeah,
And that's taken some getting used to. I mean, there's still spots. I mean, I showed you the one abandoned building that I went to with some friends,
that
and
was cool.
yeah, I'm that the other thing is like right now I'm a little nervous about sharing any footage of what I've been doing here because Casa is so like restrictive about stuff like that.
Yeah,
And then on top of that, I'm still here on a visa that's not permanent right now. So
yeah,
it's like I'm worried about risking all of that and like posting something that might, risk, any of my ability to stay here.
hmm, hmm,
So a lot of my flying has just been for me instead of sharing a lot of it like I was before.
yeah,
Um, but like even still, like it's been a lot less volume wise of how much I'm flying.
yeah.
I still have been lucky to get to fly some really cool spots. Like I showed you the video of my mountain surfing
Yes.
recently, and like stuff like that's really cool. Like that's not something that I got a chance to do a lot of in the U.S.
Hmm.
Which you'd think that flying in New Jersey, that New Jersey has mountains up in the north part of New Jersey where I grew up,
Hmm.
but like the way that mountains are here, it's easier to find a spot to set up and have good signal and range.
Hmm.
Whereas like the mountains in Jersey are a little different. Like
Hmm.
they're more jagged and like spots are more blocked off and stuff like that.
Okay.
There's still the risk of like losing your quad in a bunch of trees that you're never going to get it
Ugh,
back from. But
yeah, yeah.
you know, um it's definitely offered me new opportunities, but they're different opportunities than I had in
Hmm.
the US where I was.
Yeah.
Um, some of the things that I do wish I had more access to is like in the States, in some cities, it was a lot easier to do like building diving and stuff like
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
which with a tiny whoop, you can get away with a lot of that kind of stuff most places. But like there were cities in the US where it's like empty enough at night where you can just dive buildings and not have to worry about people being there.
Yeah.
Whereas, Sydney here is fairly populated everywhere. It's hard to get a point where you can safely dive a building, and
Yeah.
then at that point, you're breaking CASA laws and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so it's definitely been a lot to navigate,
Yeah.
and learning new laws from a new country's systems that they have in place has been daunting too.
Hmm.
Um, so it makes it a lot of new challenges that I understand why there are a lot of people here that don't fly as much and don't fly a lot.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I'm still kind of the mind of like, fuck it, fly and hopefully you don't get caught.
Hmm.
But at the same time, it's risk management and I understand it.
Yeah. Yeah. It is funny because I lost a bit the flame at the same time as I got the actual jobs in with having my license and Casa knowing about me as a pilot, and all of this combined played a big role in how much I stopped, but more like also just losing the flame in the first place of always having to fix shit. I just got
Mhm,
tired of it, but it's also now sometimes I go fly and I'm like, oh, especially now, I told you I'm chief remote pilot now.
mhm.
But that's even more scary because somehow if I do something wrong, this is really bad, and it can have repercussion, or like it can have consequences on the business I work for, which is not even my business. Maybe if I wasn't working for an employer as their chief pilot, I wouldn't care. But now I'm like, oh my god, like,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, I had some of the same problems as far as, like, even in the US. Here, I don't have my license with CASA yet. I haven't
Hmm.
needed it so far, but eventually I'm probably going to get it.
Yeah.
It's kind of hinged on, can I stay permanently or not? Does it make sense to get it or not?
Yeah.
But in the US, I had my FAA drone license. I was doing drone work for companies and stuff like that. Um, but I was always still kind of like, I'm still gonna do it anyway.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a moot point at some point when you're trespassing and getting into like abandoned buildings and stuff like that anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like, is my FAA license the thing that's most at risk here? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe not. Do the cops really care? Most of the time, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've always taken that risk in that regard. I mean, now it's a little different because like my ability to stay here hinges on it a bit
Hmm.
more.
Yeah.
Um, which definitely makes me look at it a little differently. Like if I knew I could stay here and not have to worry about like being kicked out of the country or something like that, um, I might be a little more inclined to just be like, fuck it, I'm doing it anyway.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
it's I gotta prioritize things. And right now, my main priority is trying to stay here, not going back to the US. And that's more important than, posting some videos or, flying a spot that I normally would have otherwise.
Yeah. Which I understand why then, your FPV is also a kind of work in progress here, because like you said, you're not sure you should get a car because you're watching your finance, because you might need money for immigration purpose. um Everything is like, I can do a little bit of it, but I can't do it fully. And at it's like glass half full and half empty. You're like, "Ah, at least I can do a bit, but I cannot do it completely." Like,
Yeah.
it's that's why it's frustrating. It must be hard to go from what you were, you know able to do and happy to do, to having to move in the first place, obviously, but then also with FPV, your own hobby, being restricted in some aspects. It's not easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a huge change as far as that goes because when I was in the US, I had the Philly crew that I was flying with fairly regularly.
Hmm.
Like most months it was like once or twice a month we were meeting up and racing, practicing, flying, whatever, at
Hmm.
some spot, filming with bot, whatever it might have been. Um, like fairly regularly, there were a good amount of events that went on between um, going like travel. Sometimes we had to travel, but going to Castle Crash or um, Beast of the East or whatever the case may be. Like there's all
What
these,
beast of the
yeah.
Sorry. I never heard of that one. I knew Castle Crash, but this one I didn't expect.
Yeah, Beast of the East is a one that they do regularly in New York, and they go
Okay.
to like this abandoned. I forget what it actually was originally. If it was
Hmm.
like an asylum or something like that,
Okay.
and they would host like an event where like they have freestyle competition type stuff, but it's more of like I forget what they called it. If it was just like collecting the letters of beast or something like that. But they had like a set of challenges that they did where like, one of them was like dive this spot, hit this gap or whatever,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Um and so like they had like those kind of challenges and whoever got all of them on video first won the competition of Beast of the East. Which I never really for freestyle, I was never competitive in that way. I was just
Hmm.
going to like fly a cool spot and hang out with people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um Same thing with Castle Crash. They have all these events and stuff, and I'm like, I don't care. I just want to like fly stuff and go to the bandos in the area and stuff like that.
Yes.
Um, but like, so we had like fairly regular events throughout the year. There's the regular meetups of the local crew. Plus, I was running a track in New Jersey because
Hmm.
like for the most part, no one was running street league in New Jersey. It wasn't a thing. And so at one point I was like, I need to practice more. I can't I can't stay competitive and be um like only practicing once every month or like every couple months. The closest chapter that was running anything was there was one in New Jersey that refused to run street league, and then there was one in Pennsylvania that was starting to get into street league type stuff,
Mhm.
and that was like 3.5 hours away. So it's like I can't be going to them all the time. Like
Yeah.
it's a hard trip to make every time I want to go over there. The other crew was only running 5 inch all the time, and then sporadically other people would run 5 inch races. There was one guy in North Jersey that would run a track in his backyard every once in a while because he had enough space for it and everything. And
Mhm.
it's just like this isn't consistent enough for me. Like I got used to like every day in the simulator to
Yeah.
practice and get good, and I'm like I'm just gonna lose my skills if this is how it is.
Yeah.
So I built up my own track in New Jersey. I got a bunch of gates through Street League and um, set up a like I found a field in the town where I was living in Trenton, which it was kind of interesting because like I set up the track and I had multiple people from like the streets that are nearby come to see what the heck I was doing,
Mhm.
and they were all happy about it because like there were basically just like people coming and dealing drugs and like having sex in the field in their car and like all this like weird shit, and like it was always getting trashed. And then once I started building the track there every weekend, like these people stopped using it as their drug deal spot and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And like so like the locals loved it because
Mhm.
I was you know basically cleaning up the field that was not being used for anything else. Like it used to be a couple baseball fields, and they tore up the baseball fields with some plan to make it like a soccer field or something like that. And then the
Mhm.
project just stalled and it just sat there for years. But
Mhm.
it was perfect for me because it was just an empty field with bleachers still there.
Mhm.
So you had spots to sit and set up and everything like that.
Yeah.
And then like it was perfect because I set it up. The people there loved me. There were times when cops would come down and see it and like come talk to me and stuff like that, and they were like totally cool with it.
Yeah.
Um, and it was just a nice spot that I had set up. I was setting up there every weekend. Some weekends it would just be me.
Mhm.
Some weekends I had people coming from states away. Like I had people from New York, from Pennsylvania, all the way down to Virginia. People were
Wow.
driving from to come to the track,
Mhm.
and there were some days where we had really good races going and stuff like that. And so that for a long period, that was my every weekend. It was like if I wasn't flying freestyle, I was racing. There was a lot of weekends where it was fly freestyle one day and race the other day. And then
Mhm.
um it just became like this religious thing that I did. And honestly, like that's what it kind of felt like. I was always setting up my track on Sundays, and it was like my own personal drone racing religious experience. Like I'd go out to the field, set up a track, just sit there and like look at what I built, and then sit there and race it for 8 hours before I broke it down, getting who knows how many packs in. There were days where I got like 30 packs in,
Wow.
and um, it's been very hard to go from that to now. It's like the local club has been canceling every race because of rain lately,
Mhm.
and I can't get out and do freestyle when I want to.
Mhm.
It's hard to find people that have time to go do it. Like there's just not as many people into it as much. They're very spread out. So it's been a lot less consistent, and that's been very very frustrating to deal with. But it's just kind of been like I keep telling myself it's a transition period right now.
Yeah.
Like until I can stay, until I can get a car. Like if I had a car, I could get my own racing equipment and find a spot to do it,
And
I'm
do the
sure.
same again. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
like, how do I get to that point?
Mhm.
And right now I can't.
Mhm.
Um, until I'm out of this limbo period, I'm stuck just hoping for the best and making do with what I can get out of it.
Mhm.
Luckily, I've made friends here, and like, I have one friend. He goes by the pilot name Tumblebee.
Mhm.
He's been really great, and we've been setting up a track together too recently. He built
Okay.
some gates and stuff, so it's getting better. It's
Mhm.
like little steps towards the right direction. I've been very grateful that he's been taking me to like all of these events and stuff. That's how I got to Mountain Mayhem and some of the other races. Like I got to race in Canberra with him.
Hmm.
He's been a good road tripper. So
Yeah.
it's not like I don't have community here. It's not like I'm not getting out there and doing stuff, but it's definitely it's different. It's been taking time to build up to what I have now, and it's still not anywhere near what I had before.
Yeah. Yeah. I assume what you said, the car is a key. I think like as an FPV pilot, because we fly those things, whether it's 5 inch, whether it's pro spec, whatever, it is it is not safe to fly just literally on the street outside of your house. You need a car to go to the spot that you're not going to be disturbed. And I don't think I could anyone could do FPV easily without a car. And
Yeah.
hopefully you don't have to completely wait about having answers about if you're going to stay here or. But if even if your situation gets a bit better financially, or sorry, um you could maybe get a car and immediately like feeling a bit more free. But yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, I mean, that's a plan, but it's like right now I'm at a point where like I have all this money set aside for just in case.
Yeah.
Like I may need lawyers, I may need to like pay more money as far as like immigration stuff goes and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So like immigration is not a cheap thing to go through. Um and so like all of that's tied up.
Yeah.
And then like I still need to have like money set aside for like rent and living and all this kind of stuff and parts because you always need parts especially
Yeah.
when you're racing all the time. um and so it's like right now I'm not at a point where I can safely just go, oh yeah, I'm just going to get a car. Like if I had, I don't know, a few $1,000s more, I could just go, okay, well, I have that buffer. I have that money set aside for just in case, and now I can get a car too.
Hmm.
And it wouldn't be as big of a deal.
Yeah.
Um but it's been expensive moving to another country. It's like it wasn't just like, "Oh, hey, I'm just gonna leave the country and, like, get set up," and I mean, I got a job fairly quickly and everything, but, like, everything costed money. Like, getting here costed money, all of the immigration stuff has costed money, sorting out all of my meds and stuff like that has been a headache and costed money. Um and like I've had to change some meds and things like that because like there's different like availability of meds here compared to in the US.
Yeah.
So having some of my stuff shipped here has been expensive. So it's like it's been a lot of costs that I didn't really expect coming
Yeah.
here. Which I thankfully I had a decent amount of money coming here saved up, but like it's it's still not like every time I feel like even still like I'm almost like how many months has it been? 8, 9 months now that I'm here. Um, it's I'm still hitting these points where I'm like, oh, here's a new expense that I never expected it out of all of this.
Yeah.
And I know that'll eventually settle down, and it'll get to a point where that's not as big of a deal. And I'm already at a point where I'm like, all right, I've been here almost a year now.
Hmm.
Like maybe it is time to start looking into getting a car, even if I don't know where I'm gonna be in a year or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, the biggest thing that's holding me back in terms of that is having a little bit of extra money for it, and also having to sell a car from another country
Yes.
was very difficult,
Yeah.
and I don't want to have to deal with that again. And it's like that's always at the back of my mind too.
Yeah.
So
And you don't want to have to, because it's always easy to sell a car when you don't care about the money.
yeah,
Like if you have unlimited, or like if you're comfortable. But like, yeah, because you don't know, and it's really hard to sell a car, and at least getting enough money for it, because you can always sell a car if you put it for like $200, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's the
yeah. But you
problem.
don't want to. Like, part of it is you don't wanna buy a junk car, and you don't
Yeah.
wanna have to sell it for, like, way less than you bought it for.
Yeah.
Like, let's say I'm here for, another 6 months, and then they're like, "We're kicking you out." Like, if I buy a car now, by the time that 6 months is up, like, the price has already dropped, but I can't just go, "Oh, I'm just gonna accept whatever for it."
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially because like if they say you're leaving, I'm not probably not going back to the US, and then I need money to sort out wherever else I'm going to.
Yes.
Plane
Yeah.
tickets, place to stay, whatever it ends up needing to be. Um, so it's a lot of unknowns and a lot of like, you know,
Hmm.
the what ifs that cause anxiety
Yeah. Yes, and
for
through all
sure.
that, I find it super, not interesting, like remarkable that you can still find it in you to be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna fly FPV. I feel like when I'm really stressed, sometimes I get depressed, and then I don't get much done. So it's still impressive that without the car and like you're very resourceful, or passionate,
I
or crazy. I don't know which one it is.
probably a little of both, to be honest. I definitely have a little bit of crazy in me for sure. Um, but part of it is like, after everything I've gone through and like everything that I've done in the States,
Hmm.
like I had to be resourceful building a track. I had to be resourceful when I was homeless. I had to be, it's been countless times where I had to be resourceful and figure things out.
Hmm.
And it's gotten to a point where I'm just like, I can't let like I mean, I'm getting older too now, and it's like I can't let all of this stuff always hold me back because when am I living then? You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yeah.
And so, um, everything just kind of pushed me to a point where I'm like, if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it. That's all there is to it.
Hmm.
I do consider the risk and weigh things out still and stuff like that, but like that's with Mountain Mayhem. Like people told me about it not too long before it happened,
Hmm.
and I was just like, I'm not gonna go. I have all these other responsibilities. I don't know if I'm gonna have the money at that point. I don't know what's gonna happen. And then it got to like the week before, and I was just like, why am I doing this to myself? I should just go and have fun. And
Yes.
then like I ended up making it work. Like they didn't even have a spot available. They're like I talked to the guy running it, and he's like, I don't know if we have enough room for you. And I'm like, please just see if you can figure it out. I'm like, I don't even need a place to stay. I'll sort out another place to stay. Just like find a spot for me if you can. He's like, all right, let me make some phone calls and stuff, and I'll see what I can do.
Nice. Yeah.
So they made up an extra spot just for me.
That's so cool. And then you got
So
your prize for the long range flying. Like,
yeah, I got the mountain surfing award.
yes, that's so good.
So it ended up being a lot of fun. It was a lot of headaches too. I had so many problems with my pro spec quad because it was like the first real race that I was going to with it. So of course
Hmm.
I ended up having to rebuild it in the middle of it and stuff like that. But like that's I've learned that that's just part of FPV, and it's either you figure it out or you don't. And it's if you're gonna
Yeah,
do it, you might as well do it 100% and figure it out if you
yeah.
can.
But I think we all have those moments where we're like, I have enough, and maybe I'm just not meant to do X or Y. But I feel like you're in a better place than even like a month ago when you were talking about your flying. Does it fluctuate? Like, because I
Oh,
know people.
100%.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, my emotions and my like mental stability fluctuates throughout a month,
Hmm.
throughout cycles and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
um, it's like there's definitely low points, and I'm hoping. I'm a little nervous right now because like I've always had this low point going into winter in the US.
Hmm.
Um, and it's starting to get more towards winter now here,
Yeah.
but um I'm a little more hopeful here because the weather's a lot nicer in general. I don't have to worry about going into the freezing cold and snow like I did in the US and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, but like, that's something I think a lot of people have to deal with in combat is just like the different levels throughout the years and throughout what's going on in their lives and stuff like that. And the one thing that's been pretty constant as long as I can afford to do it and find the time and find a way has been FPV. And it's there's times when I get down and I'm like, I don't want to do it. I don't have the energy to do it. But then every time I'm in those spaces and I push myself to go out and do it anyway, it ends up lifting me up in a lot of ways. Like between the community, between doing something that I love. Um, just it's always been one of those things that when I'm flying, all of the problems that I'm worried about in the world just kind of go away for that little bit of time.
Yeah.
And, I think that that's something that a lot of people need. And it's kind of like any like thing that helps your mental health. It's like you have to be mindful of actually doing those things.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to fall out of doing them, whether it be like meditation or exercise or whatever may help your mental health, reaching out to friends and talking to friends when you need to and stuff like that. Like it's so easy to get into a headspace where you're like, I'm not going to do it. I don't deserve it. I don't need it. I'm just feeling shitty. Like I don't want to do it.
Mhm.
Um, but then once you do it, you go, oh, that actually helped a lot.
Yeah.
And that's how FPV has been consistently for me throughout the 10 years that I've been doing it now.
Yeah.
Um, I get frustrated. I mean, everybody gets frustrated with this hobby. There's so much to deal with, and there's so many problems that you can run into. Quads just not working, getting frustrated with like repeat problems that you think you solved that just don't want to go away. Um, like I've seen so many people quit over those kinds of problems altogether. I've seen people who quit for periods of time and then come back to it. I mean, we all need a break to some degree, you
Mhm.
know. Um, some of my breaks have been more forced upon me than voluntary, but it's it we all have to take breaks from stuff like this in general because like if you don't, I think you'll go crazy overall.
Yeah.
But um, at the same time, every time I come back to it, I'm like, I miss this. I remember why I did it so much and why it's such an important part of my life. Um, and I mean, it's for me, it's like I know you said that you do it less now that you work in drones. That that's never been a thing for me. Like
Mhm.
the I mean, even before drones, I loved computers and computers were my hobby. I was building um like water cooled computers back when water cooling units weren't available and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I would go to work and work on servers and in data centers and stuff like that. And then like I got tired of that job for not even for the work that I was doing, but for the toxic people that were in the environments that I was working
Mhm.
over and over again.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I needed to change careers. And I was like, I'm gonna make my new hobby my career again.
Yeah.
And I don't I've worked with so many people over the years who are like, I do this for work and I just can't go home and do it more. And I'm like, I don't know how people do that. I'm like, I do it for work and I'm like, I'm going home and doing the same thing.
Yes. Yeah. It makes sense. I think mine is not so much related to drones. I think um I was talking about this with Schizo when we recorded for the podcast, and it was about how, and he feels the same, that we liked a bit of the storytelling. And now I get to do my storytelling at work for other people, but I still get to do a storytelling. And it doesn't involve crashing drones at 100 k's an hour into a wall. And I find it more relaxing to do this type of storytelling. But I do feel I miss putting on the goggles or what I call my happy sound, like the going up
Yeah. No,
or
I
the
remember you saying that the first time you went flying with me. You didn't even fly, and I just started flying, and you're like, "It's the happy
yeah.
sounds."
It will always be the happy sound. You have like it's like the um yeah, we have this saying in France, which is called La Madeleine de Proust, which is the if it's from a book. It's a woman in a book. She eats a cake, and suddenly she has all the memory that when she was a kid eating that
Mhm.
same cake. And when I hear the FPV sound, I'm like, everything goes back, to 10 years ago. Not 10 for me, more like 9, but and everything that your life is attached to, the people you've been around and the countries you've been to, because I was so lucky to go everywhere at some stage. It was, yeah. And so you hear zzz, it, all of this is like poof. And even like yeah, when my drone is working, and then putting the goggles, getting up in the air is a beautiful feeling. um that I'm so grateful I got to do it. um And at the moment, I just don't have it in me to get it going. And also there's the fear of I get it going and then I break it again. Am I going to want to fix it again? um, and I'm so tempted to buy a ready to fly drone online. If I wasn't that behind with technology on analog, I think I would have already done it.
I mean, a lot of people still use analog, and even when I went up to the top of the mountain, I wasn't using HD0. I was using analog for that.
Yeah,
Um,
but I have
analog
Crossfire
is
as well.
yeah, analog is not a dead technology yet.
Yeah.
It still has its purpose and its place. There's a lot of reasons I still like analog. It's nice having that clear HD video
Hmm.
for a lot of reasons, but it's got its own problems as far as like when you start getting further away, the way it breaks up is harder to fly through and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you told me about your issues with DJI and like, there's like stuff like that that you can't get past.
Hmm.
Um, I don't unless they can find some way to work around those things. Like analog is gonna stick around, in my opinion.
Mm.
Um, but it's it's gotten to a point where you can definitely just buy a bind and fly
Hmm.
now, and it's just like it used to be like you're not gonna get something good and you're
Yeah.
better off building stuff. Now, I mean, the one that I flew up to the top of the mountain with was a bind and fly.
Yeah.
I didn't buy it. Bot gave it to me from one of his reviews, but he was just
Yeah.
like, "I don't fly analog. You still fly analog, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Here you go." So I just slapped the GPS on it and sent it up the mountain. Which I mean, it was actually a little bit easier in that regard because it was like, this is not one that I built. I didn't put my heart into it. If I lose it in the mountains, oh well.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
um, so it's gotten a lot better in that regard. It's a
Yeah.
lot easier to just buy them and fly them and not worry so much.
Hmm.
Um, and analog's, cheap enough for the most part, although now prices are going up because of all this war stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but like, it's not that big of a deal to stay on analog, but
Mm.
it definitely does. Even with the whoops, I enjoy flying analog still, but
Mm.
the HD0 on the little whoops, especially if you're flying close to yourself,
Oh yeah.
it's 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 a better experience in that regard. So it's hard. It's like there's always that trade-off. It's like you're either jumping into new technology and spending more money
Yeah.
or sticking with the old stuff. I mean, I stuck on analog until literally the first HD0 stuff I bought was here in Australia.
Mm.
Like I
Mm.
didn't even use HD0 in the US at all.
Mm.
And I had HD0 box
Yeah.
goggles that again that bot gave me because he's always giving me free stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
But like I was just like I don't have a reason to upgrade the stuff, so why do it?
Yeah.
But once I came here, it was like, all right, I'm gonna get into the 5-inch. I need to rebuild race quads and that kind of stuff. For racing, to me, HD0 makes perfect sense
Mm.
because it's especially with the bigger quads, your chances of breaking it's not very high. The clearer video makes it a lot easier to race.
Mm.
And you're not flying far enough away from you to like have terrible breakup or anything like that.
Mm.
So in those senses, it makes sense. I like it on the whoops, but all of my 5 inches are still analog. My 7 inches and 6 inch that I use for like longer range stuff, analog.
Mm.
Um, I still use analog for a lot of stuff and still prefer it for reasons.
Yeah. 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 I love analog. It does the job for me. And then I'm still on Crossfire. Like we were talking about it last time on the phone, and I was like, "What's all you've been talking about? What's ELRC?
ELOS, yeah.
What are you talking about?" I don't even. Yeah, Crossfire is old now. Crossfire is 2018, I think. That's when they released it. Or 17 even. Like I don't remember, but yeah.
Yeah, I remember one of the friends in that first friend group that I flew with. He was flying Crossfire,
Mm.
and I was like, I think back then I was on whatever the FR Sky, Free
Yeah,
Sky,
that's how I
whatever
started.
whatever their their protocol was. I forget
Mhm.
what it was called. Um, but like I was having fail safes all the time with that, and I'm like, I don't care. I'm just using it until it dies.
Yes. Yeah. I remember FA Sky, the VT the RX was called XM Plus at some stage. I remember
Mhm.
flying that. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's hard. It's what you were talking about earlier. That I don't have. Like if I get a bit anxious or a bit down, and at the moment, I just we were talking about the climate of the world, even though I'm not necessarily that impacted at all
Mhm.
yet. um, it's just very depressing. I found it hard recently
Yeah.
to be there. And FPV for me, because it is so I love it, but it is taxing when it comes to fixing or figuring it out or even buying parts. It doesn't necessarily give me joy even to buy the parts. Like I have some money. For example, I spent a ridiculous amount of money at the Grand Prix yesterday.
Mhm.
But that gave me joy.
Yeah.
Whereas with FPV, I'm not sure it will. And so it's interesting how it's different for everybody, obviously. Yeah.
I think that that's definitely part of it, and like there's definitely people like I've seen so many people who are just like I don't have fun with this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, over the years, and I think for me a big part of it has always been the community part of it is part of what makes it worth it to stay in it.
Yeah.
So like when you don't have enough people around doing it and talk to about it and to keep you inspired with it and keep
Yeah.
you interested, and like there's been so many times even when I was in the US where like I'd feel down and then I'd call Bot up and like, I'd be like, I don't really feel like flying. And he's like, I gotta make a video though. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go fly.
Yeah. Yeah. It is true,
So
but also, I could just create my own community. I've had friends sporadically. I've had like, I had Snake FPV for a while and he stopped. And then I had my friend James, and it's not, well, he kind of stopped. And then I had my friend oh no, you didn't meet him. We went to his spot in Melton and then kind of stopped doing it. He moved, and I could, especially with my platform, that it's a lot more quiet now, but I feel like I could still be like, hey, who wants to fly this Sunday? Where are you flying? And I could go somewhere. I don't really have that excuse of not having a community, but I did go from having my ex-partner, being an FPV pilot, plus having two housemates at some stage who were FPV pilots. So the four of us, plus working in a hobby store where my coworker was an FPV pilot after I taught him to fly. That was so easy to just
yeah,
one of us would be like, we're flying this weekend? Oh, okay. And then we go and we're happy. That was easy. And I guess like at the moment it's a matter of it's not easy and I'm lazy or I don't have it in me to make it happen, I suppose.
yeah. And I think that part of that comes with like as we get older in the
Mhm.
FPV community, like more and more people in our circle drop off because they decide to take it, go to like their life things, like having kids and a family and
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff. So they tend to like back off of FPV. And
Mhm.
like as that happens, it becomes harder and harder to have that community. And like even if you're all still in it, it's like, I don't like someone's going to be like, I don't want to do it. I have life things to deal with or
Yeah.
whatever. Um, which for me, that's been part of like what has kind of kept me in it because I don't have those ties. Like I don't have a family that I'm building
Mhm.
right now. And like, so like FPV has always been kind of like, that is my family. Like
Mhm.
all,
Mhm.
all of the people that I consider family pretty much are part of the FPV community.
Yeah.
Um, so it's like, in that way, it's always kept me more in it than some of the other people around me.
Yeah.
Um, but like it definitely like I've seen so many people drop off for those reasons, and like
Yeah.
even here, like I've made friends here who fly freestyle, um, and like it's just like I hit them up and it's like, oh, I have the kids this weekend. Oh, I have to work this weekend. I can't do it. And like it's always so many excuses of, why they can't do it, and it makes it hard to consistently be in it when
Yeah.
everyone's like that.
Yeah.
So like it definitely changes over time. It was a lot easier when I was younger and more people had that, like, I don't have any responsibilities and I don't give a shit and this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
And then it starts dying off with a lot of people, and like the racing, part of why that sticks around is because there are clubs for it that do it regularly. And then also, like, I find that a lot of my friends end up being younger guys
Yeah.
because it's like, or younger girls. There's just less girls in most of it. But
Yes.
like it ends up being younger people because they're the ones who are in it and doing it regularly and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's very few adults who stick to it and keep doing it consistently.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones who do, they have a family and they go to the races, but like they're not doing it outside of that a lot of the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's definitely like as you get older, less and less people are sticking to it and doing it all the time.
Yeah.
Um, which makes it a little weird sometimes because it's like I feel like sometimes I'm sitting in these groups and I'm just like I know I'm the oldest one here.
Yeah.
It makes
Yeah.
me feel like an old person. And I'm lucky enough that people like mostly think I'm young, like younger than I am.
Yes.
So like that helps, but like, it is like when some of these younger people are talking about some of the shit that they see online and things that they're doing, I'm just like, oh God, I feel like an old person right now.
Talking about like with the new slang, like my colleague at work, she's younger and she say a lot of new slang, like I don't know, like um whatever, like slay. Even slay is far from me to be like, just I say something, she's like, yeah, queen slay. I was like, yeah, so it's funny. But yeah, you've met a few of you met a friend of mine, you met J-Web. Speaking of young people,
Yeah.
I'm so glad you guys are friends now, like it's amazing.
Yeah, that's been an interesting one because like we met in the races, but then like I interacted with him through work because he works for one of our clients. So it's been like I get two different experiences with him, which is a little different compared to most.
Yeah.
Um, but it's been cool. He's a very good person. I really enjoy talking to him. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, it was really good to have you on the podcast. As you know, I've been a bit tired this weekend, but I felt like this 2 hours, Jesus, every
has
time
it
we
really been
call,
2 hours?
it's been 2 hours. I was like, we'll do 1 hour, don't stress about it. And then 2 hours later, boom, boom. But I like it. It's always like that. Even when we call, like, it
Yeah.
always goes on. Um, it was interesting to hear about your experience, and I know you were a bit concerned. You were like, "What am I gonna bring to the table?" But I'm like, "This was a beautiful story. I like it. I like your story."
Well, I'm glad I can bring something to it. I mean, I've had so much experience over the years. Like I know that I have my stories and the things that I've done and everything like that.
Mhm.
It's just it was a little intimidating with like you just had um like Schizo
Yeah.
and Wild Billy, and I'm like, they're like FPV legends basically, and I'm like, who am I?
It's funny because I hit up another girl that I met when I flew in the US, and at the time, she was part of the community, and it was fun to follow what she was doing when I was flying a lot, and then she reduced a bit as well. And when I said I really want to come as well on this series, she's like, "Me? Why?" I'm like, "Because I want to." So that's what all of you guys, you who I want on the podcast. So this is why it happens. And regardless of that, like I said, your path is not common. Like, you have done a bit of everything, and you have ranking up high on categories of different things that not everybody gets to do. Like, I didn't know what street league was until you told me street league this, street league that, and I remember being like, I have to tell her after a bit that I don't know what street league is. I have to be like, what is it?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I forget like there's like definitely like two like separate parts of FPV and like they don't cross over for everybody.
Yeah.
And like I should realize that because for so long I was only on the freestyle side, but
Mhm.
like I forget that not everyone makes that transition like I did.
The first time you mentioned Street League, because we pretty much had this conversation, although I learned more things again tonight, but we had that a bit before. And you said Street League this, and within 30 minutes of being into that, I was like, I need to tell her I don't know what that is, but she looks like she thinks I know what it is, and now I'm going to sound stupid. It's like, so what is it exactly? But
Yeah.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's a little bit of like the autism hyperfixation stuff. Like I just get into talking about it and it's like I forget that no one else has this kind of interest in some of the things that I get into.
But yeah, thanks for coming and sharing all of that. It's interesting, and I think people will have learned a couple of things. And I don't know. Personally, when I listen to podcasts, I love listening to people experience. In a way, we all know what FPV is, but it means something different for every single one of us, and it's nice to always hear a new story, a new life story. So usually, what I ask at the end of the episode is like, if you want people to find you online, where do they go? And also, is there anything we haven't talked about, like maybe you wanted to tell us about your project, or anything not even FPV related that you wanted to add, before we close the podcast episode?
I mean, as far as like outside of FPV, there really like that it's my life.
Yeah.
It's all I do. It's if I'm not doing FPV, there's not much else going on. I work with drones. I fly drones for on the weekends. Like that's all there is for me. So I mean that's I don't know that there's anything outside of drones that I can add.
Yeah.
Um, but like the only thing I can say is like if you love it, just keep doing it.
Hmm.
And if it makes you happy, there's no reason to stop and don't let the depression and stuff like that stop you.
Hmm. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Don't let the
Um,
bastards get you down.
yeah. Don't let the bastards get you down and don't let the anxiety lie to you.
Yeah, and so the last thing that I think we didn't touch on, and I think we can close on that, is like you're streaming on Twitch
Yeah.
at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been streaming fairly regularly. It's got a little disrupted recently because of work getting a little intense at the moment, but I usually try to stream 2 nights a week Australian time. Um, and then like I do usually 1, sometimes 2 mornings on the weekends. Like early enough in the morning where it crosses over with
Hmm.
nighttime for on on Friday and Saturday for people in America.
Hmm.
Um, so I've been doing that fairly regularly recently. Usually drone racing, not freestyle. So
Hmm.
um, and I know that's not everybody's cup of tea, but it's not really necessarily about like being competitive. Usually I'm racing by myself, just practicing and there to chat and
Hmm.
hang out with people. But it's been consistent at least 2 nights a week and at least 1 morning on the weekends
Hmm.
slash night times for people in the US.
Yes. Yeah, and it's
Um,
under Goddess Randy as well, correct?
yeah, all of my accounts across everything is goddess_Randy.
Yeah.
If you can't seem to find me on anything as far as like Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, whatever, you can just go to goddessrandy.com without the underscore and everything's there. I have some of my stuff right at the on the page, like some of my YouTube and stuff like that, and then I have links to everything else.
Cool. Awesome. I know that, but people don't. So
Yeah.
go have a look, people. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you liked it, well, leave us some recommendation. I'm always super bad at doing my advertisement. Like, if you like it, I'm so happy already. But I should say, like it, share it, whatever. Do the thing so maybe it reaches more people. It's not necessarily to grow the audience. It is to, because I love what I'm talking about with my guests. I just want people to be able to hear it because I think it's important and it's interesting. And thanks, Randy, for coming. I
Thanks for
hope
having me.
your prospect adventure and your future FPV related to car adventures will happen soon, so that you feel even more free. And yeah, it was a good talk. Thanks for coming today.
All right, thank you.
All right, everybody, have fun, happy flying, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.
Bye bye.